James Harrison stared at the pristine white envelope that had arrived at his penthouse that morning. The gold embossing caught the light from his floor-to-ceiling windows, and he could smell the expensive perfume that still clung to the paper. Victoria Sterling was getting married after 3 years of silence, after the way she had destroyed him emotionally and walked away without a single explanation. She had the audacity to send him a wedding invitation. He remembered the night she left like it was yesterday. They had been planning their own wedding, had picked out the venue, chosen the flowers, even sent save-the-dates to their friends and family. Then, without warning, Victoria announced she was leaving him for someone else. Someone richer, she had said with cruel honesty. Someone who could give her the lifestyle she truly deserved. James had built his tech empire from nothing. But apparently, his billions were not enough for Victoria Sterling. She wanted old money, established wealth, the kind that came with family names and inherited power. So, she left him for Thomas Sterling Jr., heir to one of the oldest banking dynasties in the country. Now, 3 years later, she was finally marrying her precious heir, and she wanted James to witness her triumph. The invitation felt like a slap in the face, a final insult to add to the injury she had already caused. But James Harrison was not the same broken man she had left behind. He had doubled his wealth, expanded his influence, and learned to protect his heart with walls of steel. If Victoria wanted him at her wedding, he would go, but he would not go alone. He would bring someone so stunning, so captivating, that every person in that church would forget the bride even existed. He would make Victoria regret every choice she had ever made. The angel in disguise that evening. James walked through the arts district of the city, trying to clear his head and plan his next move. He needed to find the perfect woman to accompany him to Victoria's wedding. Someone elegant, sophisticated, someone who would make heads turn and hearts race. He was so lost in thought that he almost missed her. She was standing in front of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, staring up at the grand columns with an expression of pure longing. Even from a distance, James could see that she was different from the usual homeless people who wandered these streets. Her clothes were worn and patched, but they were clean. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, but it shone like silk in the streetlight. And when she turned to look at him, her eyes held a depth and intelligence that took his breath away. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said, nodding toward the museum. Her voice was soft but cultured, with the kind of refined accent that spoke of expensive education and high society upbringing. James found himself walking closer to her, drawn by something he couldn't quite identify. "You seem to know something about art," he said, studying her face in the dim light. She smiled, and for a moment, the sadness in her eyes was replaced by genuine warmth. "I used to, before life decided to teach me some harder lessons." She gestured to her simple clothes and the small backpack at her feet. "Now I just look from the outside and remember what it felt like to be on the inside." There was something about her that James couldn't shake. She carried herself with a grace that no amount of hardship could completely erase. When she spoke about art, her whole face lit up with passion and knowledge. She told him about the Impressionist collection inside the museum, about the way Monet captured light and shadow, about the revolutionary techniques that changed the art world forever. "You talk like someone who has studied these pieces professionally," James observed. Alina laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I used to own a gallery, 3 of them actually. My family dealt in fine art for generations. We specialized in discovering new talent and bringing their work to collectors who could appreciate true artistry." Her voice grew quiet. "Was before Victoria Sterling decided she wanted what we had." James felt his heart stop. "Victoria Sterling?" Alina looked at him with surprise. "You know her?" "Ex-fiancée," James said slowly. "And apparently you have history with her too." For a long moment, they stared at each other in stunned silence. Then Alina began to laugh, a sound that was part amusement and part disbelief. "The universe has a twisted sense of humor," she said. "Victoria Sterling destroyed my family's business, ruined my reputation, and stole everything we had worked for generations to build. And now I'm standing here talking to the man she threw away like garbage." James felt a strange connection forming between them, a bond forged by shared pain and mutual betrayal. Tell me what she did to you, he said gently. Elena's eyes grew, distant as she remembered. My family's galleries were successful, but we were never part of the old money crowd. We were new wealth, self-made, and that made us targets for people like Victoria. She approached us about a partnership, said she could introduce us to her father's wealthy friends and expand our client base. She paused, wrapping her arms around herself as if trying to ward off the chill of the memory. We trusted her. Seemed so sincere, so interested in art and culture. She spent months learning about our business, our clients, our methods, and then, one day we discovered that she had been systematically stealing our client lists, copying our authentication methods, and setting up her own competing galleries. James felt anger building in his chest. This was exactly the kind of ruthless behavior he should have expected from Victoria. How did she get away with it? Money and connections, Elena said bitterly. When we tried to take legal action, we discovered that she had planted false evidence suggesting that we were selling forgeries. Her father's lawyers destroyed us in court. Our reputation was ruined, our clients fled, and we lost everything. My parents were so devastated that they moved to Europe and never spoke of the art world again. James studied Elena's face, seeing the pain and strength that existed side by side in her expression. And you? What happened to you? I tried to rebuild, Elena said simply. I sold everything I had left and attempted to start over with a small gallery in a different city. But Victoria's reach was longer than I realized. Everywhere I went, whispers followed me. No one would work with a woman who had allegedly sold fake masterpieces. Eventually I ran out of money, out of options, and out of hope. She looked up at the museum again, and James could see tears glistening in her eyes. I've been on the streets for 8 months now. Some days I come here just to remember what it felt like to be surrounded by beauty, to be part of something greater than myself. James felt his heart breaking for this woman who had lost everything because of Victoria's greed and cruelty. But he also felt something else, something that surprised him with its intensity. He felt admiration for her strength, her dignity, her refusal to let circumstances crush her spirit completely. Elena, he said, and she looked at him with surprise that he remembered her name. What if I told you that Victoria is getting married next week, and I have been invited to witness her moment of triumph? Elena's eyes sharpened with interest. I would say that sounds like the perfect opportunity for karma to finally catch up with her. James smiled, and for the first time in months, it was a genuine smile. What if I also told you that I need a date for this wedding? Someone intelligent, beautiful, and sophisticated enough to remind everyone in that room what real class looks like. Elena stared at him for a long moment, and he could see her mind working, calculating the possibilities. You want me to go with you to Victoria Sterling's wedding? I want you to go with me and show everyone there what she destroyed when she chose money over character, when she chose cruelty over kindness. James stepped closer to her, and he could smell the faint scent of jasmine that seemed to cling to her despite her circumstances. I want you to walk into that church like the queen you were born to be and remind Victoria Sterling of every life she has ruined in her climb to the top. Elena was quiet for so long that James began to worry he had offended her. But when she finally spoke, her voice was steady and determined. I haven't worn a gown in over a year. I haven't been to a social function since my world fell apart. I'm not sure I remember how to be the person I used to be. You don't need to remember, James said gently. You just need to be yourself. The woman who can discuss impressionist techniques with passion, who carries herself with grace even when life has knocked her down, who has survived months on the street without losing her dignity or her dreams. That woman is more than enough to outshine every socialite in that room. Elena looked at him for a long time, studying his face as if trying to determine whether he was sincere or simply playing another game. Finally, she nodded slowly. If you're serious about this, if you really want me to accompany you to this wedding, then I accept. But I have one condition. Name it. When we walk into that church, we walk in as equals. Not as the millionaire and his charity case, not as the powerful man and the grateful woman he rescued. We walk in as two people who have been hurt by the same person and who are choosing to face her together. James felt something shift in his chest, something that had been frozen for 3 years beginning to thaw. Deal, he said, extending his hand to her. When Alina took his hand, her grip was firm and confident, and James knew that he had found something far more valuable than revenge. He had found a partner, an equal, someone who understood both strength and vulnerability. As they stood there in the shadow of the museum, James realized that Victoria Sterling might have done him the greatest favor of his life when she walked away, because if she hadn't left him, he never would have found Alina Rodriguez, the woman who was about to change his entire world. The transformation, the morning of Victoria's wedding, dawned bright and clear, as if the universe itself was conspiring to make the day perfect for revelations. James stood in his penthouse, adjusting his black tie and trying to calm the nervous energy that had been building in his chest since he woke up. Today was not just about revenge anymore. Somewhere in the past week, as he had spent time with Alina, helping her prepare for this moment, his motivations had shifted into something deeper and more complex. Alina had spent the week at his penthouse. James had watched in amazement as she transformed from a woman broken by circumstances into the sophisticated, confident person she had always been underneath. He had arranged for stylists, personal shoppers, and a full spa treatment. But Alina had surprised him by taking charge of her own transformation. She knew exactly what kind of gown would suit her figure, exactly how she wanted her hair styled, exactly which jewelry would complement her dress without overwhelming her natural beauty. Watching her make these choices, James realized that Alina had not lost her sense of style or her understanding of elegance. She had simply been forced to set those things aside while she focused on survival. Now, as he waited for her to emerge from the guest bedroom where she had been getting ready, James felt his heart racing with anticipation. He had seen glimpses of the woman Alina used to be throughout the week, but today she would reclaim that identity completely. When the bedroom door finally opened, James felt his breath catch in his throat. Alina stood in the doorway wearing a deep emerald gown that hugged her curves perfectly and flowed like water when she moved. Her dark hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, with a few soft curls framing her face, or simple diamond earrings, and a delicate necklace that drew attention to the graceful line of her neck. But it was not just her physical transformation that took James's breath away. It was the way she carried herself, the confidence in her posture, the intelligence and strength that shone from her eyes. This was Alina Rodriguez as she was meant to be seen, as she had been before Victoria Sterling tried to destroy her. "Look incredible," James said. His voice came out rougher with emotion than he had intended. Alina smiled, and he could see a hint of the nervousness she was trying to hide. "I feel like I'm putting on a costume," she admitted. "Like I'm pretending to be someone I used to be, but am not sure I can be again." James crossed the room and took her hands in his. "You're not pretending to be anyone," he said firmly. "This is who you are. This is who you have always been. The circumstances of the past year don't change that. Your worth, your intelligence, your grace, your strength, none of that disappeared just because you lost your material possessions." Alina looked up at him, and he could see tears glistening in her eyes. What if she recognizes me? What if she tries to humiliate me in front of everyone? Then she discovered that the woman she tried to destroy is stronger than she ever imagined, James said. And she realized that her victory was temporary, while your character is permanent. Alina squeezed his hands, drawing strength from his words and his presence. "Promise me something," she said. "Anything. Promise me that whatever happens today, whatever Victoria does or says, we'll face it together. I don't want to go back to being alone and invisible." James felt his heart clench with an emotion he had not experienced in years. "Alina, I promise you that whatever happens today, you will never be alone again, not if I have anything to say about it." The grand entrance, the wedding was being held at the most exclusive country club in the state, a sprawling estate with manicured gardens and a chapel that looked like something out of a fairy tale. As their limousine pulled up to the entrance, James could see that Victoria had spared no expense in creating her perfect day. There were hundreds of guests, all dressed in their finest attire, all eager to witness the union of two of the most powerful families in the region. James helped Alina out of the car, and he felt a surge of pride as he watched her emerge with perfect grace and poise. She looked like she belonged here, like she had been born to attend events like this. Several people turned to look at them as they approached the chapel, and James could hear whispers of curiosity about the stunning woman on his arm. "Who is she?" he heard someone ask. "I've never seen her before," another voice replied. "But she's absolutely gorgeous." Lena heard the whispers too, and James felt her hand tighten slightly on his arm. When he looked at her face, he saw only calm determination. She was ready for this moment, ready to face the woman who had tried to erase her from existence. They found their seats near the front of the chapel, close enough to see every detail of the ceremony, close enough for Victoria to notice them immediately. When she walked down the aisle, James had specifically requested seats in this section. Knowing that Victoria would not be able to ignore their presence, the ceremony began with all the pomp and pageantry that Victoria had always loved. The music was perfectly orchestrated. The flowers were breathtakingly beautiful. The setting was like something out of a magazine. But James found himself unable to focus on any of it. His attention was entirely consumed by the woman sitting beside him, by the way she watched the proceedings with intelligent eyes, by the subtle reactions he could see flickering across her face. Then Victoria appeared at the back of the chapel, resplendent in a gown that probably cost more than most people made in a year. She began her processional down the aisle, smiling and nodding to guests, playing the role of the blushing bride to perfection. But when her gaze swept over the section where James and Elena were sitting, her smile faltered. James watched as Victoria's eyes locked onto Elena's face, and he saw the exact moment when recognition dawned. Victoria's face went pale, her step faltered slightly, and for just a moment, her carefully constructed facade cracked. She recovered quickly, but not before several people in the front rows noticed her momentary loss of composure. Elena sat perfectly, still, watching Victoria with calm, steady eyes. She did not smile, did not nod, did not acknowledge Victoria in any way. She simply observed, like a scientist studying a particularly interesting specimen. And somehow, that complete lack of reaction was more powerful than any dramatic gesture could have been. Victoria managed to complete her walk down the aisle and take her place at the altar. But James could see that she was shaken. Over at their section of the chapel, as if she could not quite believe what she was seeing, her new husband, Thomas Sterling Jr., seemed oblivious to his bride's distraction. But James noticed that Victoria's responses during the ceremony were mechanical, lacking the joy and emotion that should have been present on her wedding day. The moment of truth, the reception, was held in the club's grand ballroom, a space that had been transformed into a wonderland of flowers, crystals, and soft lighting. Tom and Elena found their assigned table, which, not surprisingly, had been placed in a location that would give them a perfect view of the head table where Victoria and her new husband would be sitting as the evening progressed. James watched Elena interact with the other guests at their table. She was charming and gracious, discussing art, literature, and current events with ease and intelligence. It was clear that she belonged in this world, that she had been born and raised to navigate these social situations with skill and grace. But James could also see the tension building in Elena as the evening wore on. Every time Victoria laughed or smiled or played the part of the happy bride, Elena's jaw tightened slightly. Every time someone complimented Victoria on her beauty or her happiness, Elena's eyes grew a little darker. The woman who had destroyed Elena's life was being celebrated and admired, while Elena remained invisible to everyone except James. Finally, as the dancing began and the evening reached its peak of celebration, Elena stood up from their table. "I need some air," she said quietly to James. "I'll be back in a few minutes." James wanted to go with her, but something in Elena's expression told him that she needed this moment alone. He watched her walk toward the French doors that led to the club's terrace, moving with the grace and dignity that had first attracted his attention. But James was not the only person who had been watching. As soon as Elena stepped outside, Victoria excused herself from the head table and followed her. James felt his heart rate quicken as he realized that the confrontation he had been both dreading and anticipating was about to happen. He waited for a few minutes, giving the two women time to begin their conversation, and then he quietly made his way toward the terrace. He did not want to interfere, but he also wanted to be close enough to support Elena if she needed him. The terrace was softly lit by paper lanterns, and James could see Alina and Victoria standing near the stone balustrade, their figures silhouetted against the night sky. He positioned himself just inside the French doors, close enough to hear their conversation, but far enough away to remain unnoticed. "Lina Rodriguez," Victoria was saying, and her voice carried a mixture of shock and anger. "I cannot believe you have the audacity to show your face here." Alina turned to face Victoria, and even from a distance, James could see the calm strength in her posture. "Hello, Victoria," she said quietly. "Congratulations on your wedding." "I have to say, I'm surprised you invited James. I would have. Thought you'd want to avoid any reminders of the people you've betrayed." Victoria's face flushed with anger. "I invited James because I wanted him to see what he lost when he wasn't good enough for me. But you have no right to be here. You have no right to be anywhere decent people gather." Lina smiled, and there was something dangerous in her expression. "Decent people? Is that what you call yourself, Victoria? A decent person who destroys families for profit. A decent person who plants false evidence and ruins innocent people's reputations. A decent person who steals everything someone has worked for and then acts like the victim when they fight back." "I don't know what you're talking about," Victoria said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Of course you do," Alina replied calmly. "You know exactly what you did to my family. You know exactly how you systematically destroyed our business, our reputation, and our lives. You know how you used your father's connections to make sure we could never recover from the damage you caused." Victoria's mask of innocence was slipping, and James could see the cruel, calculating woman that Alina had described emerging from beneath the surface. "Your family was weak," Victoria said harshly. "You didn't have the connections or the ruthlessness to survive in the real world. I simply accelerated the inevitable." Alina stepped closer to Victoria, and her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more power than shouting would have. "You're right about one thing," she said. "My family was not ruthless. We believed in honesty, in treating people with respect, in building something beautiful rather than tearing others down, and you saw that as weakness." She paused, and when she continued, her voice was steady and strong. "But you made one crucial mistake, Victoria. You assumed that destroying my business would destroy me. You thought that taking away my money and my reputation would make me disappear, but you forgot something important." "What's that?" Victoria asked, and for the first time. James heard uncertainty in her voice. Alina smiled, and it was the most beautiful and terrifying expression James had ever seen. "You forgot that true strength doesn't come from what you own or what people think of you. It comes from who you are when everything else is stripped away. And when you stripped everything away from me, you didn't destroy me. You revealed exactly how strong I really am." Victoria stared at Alina, and James could see fear beginning to creep into her eyes. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want you to know that I survived," Alina said simply. "I want you to know that all your efforts to erase me from existence failed. I want you to know that I'm still here, still standing, still capable of walking into rooms like this and commanding respect and attention." She gestured toward the ballroom behind them. "I want you to know that you didn't win." For a moment, the two women stood in silence, facing each other like generals on a battlefield. Then Victoria's composure cracked completely. "You think showing up here with James changes anything?" she spat. "You think putting on a pretty dress makes you important again? You're nothing, Alina. You're a homeless woman playing dress-up, pretending to be something you're not." But Alina did not flinch at Victoria's words. Instead, she laughed, a sound that was full of genuine amusement. "Oh, Victoria," she said, "you still don't understand, do you? I'm not pretending to be anything. I am exactly who I have always been. The only difference is that now I know what I'm truly capable of surviving." She turned to walk back toward the ballroom but paused at the French doors. "Enjoy your wedding night," she said without looking back. "Because tomorrow, the world is going to learn exactly what kind of woman you really are." And with that, Alina walked back into the ballroom, leaving Victoria standing alone on the terrace. Her perfect wedding night suddenly feeling a lot less perfect than she had planned. The truth emerges. James watched Alina turn to the ballroom with a mixture of admiration and concern. Her confrontation with Victoria had been powerful and dignified, but he could see the emotional toll it had taken on her. Her hands were trembling slightly as she picked up her champagne glass, and there was a tightness around her eyes that spoke of pain carefully controlled. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly, placing his hand gently on her arm. Alina looked up at him, and he saw a fire burning in her eyes that had not been there before. "I'm better than all right," she said. "For the first time in a year, I feel like myself again. Not the broken woman who lost everything, not the victim who was too weak to fight back, but the woman I was before Victoria Sterling tried to destroy me." James felt his heart swell with pride and something deeper, something that felt suspiciously like love. "What did you mean when you told her that tomorrow the world would learn what kind of woman she really is?" Elena smiled, and this time there was nothing bitter or sad in her expression. "I meant that it's time for the truth to come out. For the past year I've been hiding, running, trying to disappear because I was ashamed of what happened to my family. But Victoria was right about one thing. I am strong. And strong people don't hide from the truth. They use it." Before James could ask what she meant, Elena's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it, and her smile widened. "My sister Rosa is here," she said. "I asked her to come tonight, and she's waiting in the parking lot." James looked at her with confusion. "Your sister? Why is she here?" "Because Rosa is a nurse at the hospital where Victoria's father was treated last year for his heart condition," Alina explained. "And Rosa has access to medical records that will be very interesting to the FBI agents who have been investigating Thomas Sterling Sr. for tax evasion and fraud." James felt his eyes widen as he began to understand. "What kind of medical records?" Elena's expression grew serious. "The kind that prove Victoria's father has been claiming to be too ill to stand trial for his crimes, while actually being in perfect health. The kind that show he's been manipulating medical tests and bribing doctors to create false diagnoses. The kind that will send both him and Victoria to prison for obstruction of justice." James stared at her in amazement. "You've been planning this for months, haven't you?" "I've been gathering evidence for months," Elena corrected. "Rosa and I have been working together to build a case against the Sterling family." "Oh, we knew that." "Victoria's wedding would be the perfect time to reveal everything, when all their powerful friends and business associates would be in one place to witness their downfall." As if on cue, Elena's phone rang, and she answered it with a calm professionalism. That reminded James of the successful businesswoman she had once been. "Yes, Agent Martinez, we're ready to proceed. The evidence packages have been distributed to the media outlets as planned. You can make the arrests whenever you're ready." James felt the room spinning around him as he realized the magnitude of what Elena had orchestrated. "Elena, what have you done?" She looked at him with steady, confident eyes. "I've done what I should have done a year ago. I've fought back. Victoria Sterling destroyed my family because she thought we were too weak and too honorable to defend ourselves. She was wrong." Before James could respond, there was a commotion near the entrance to the ballroom. Several people in dark suits were entering, and James recognized them immediately as federal agents. They moved with purposeful efficiency through the crowd, heading directly toward the head table where Victoria and her new husband were sitting. The music stopped abruptly as the lead agent approached Victoria. "Victoria Sterling, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, obstruction of justice, and racketeering." The agent's voice carried clearly through the now silent ballroom. "You have the right to remain silent." Victoria's face went white with shock and terror. "There must be some mistake," she protested, but her voice cracked with fear. "This is my wedding day. You can't do this. Ma'am, please turn around and place your hands behind your back," the agent said firmly. As the handcuffs clicked into place around Victoria's wrists, chaos erupted in the ballroom. Guests were shouting questions, cameras were flashing, and Thomas Sterling Jr. was demanding to know what was happening to his new wife. Lena sat calmly at their table, watching the scene unfold with the satisfaction of someone who had finally seen justice served. James looked at the woman beside him with new eyes. This was not the broken homeless woman he had found on the street a week ago. This was Elena Rodriguez, brilliant businesswoman, master strategist, and a force of nature who had just brought down one of the most powerful families in the country. The power of truth, as the agents escorted Victoria from the ballroom, Elena stood up and walked toward the microphone that had been set up for the wedding toasts. The room gradually quieted as people realized that someone was about to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elena said, her voice clear and strong, "I know this evening has taken an unexpected turn, and many of you are confused about what just happened. Allow me to introduce myself properly. My name is Elena Rodriguez, and I am the former owner of Rodriguez Fine Arts, a family business that was destroyed by Victoria Sterling through fraud, forgery, and corporate espionage." A murmur ran through the crowd as people began to recognize the name. The Rodriguez family had been well known in art circles before their sudden disappearance from the scene. "For the past year," Elena continued, "I have been gathering evidence of the Sterling family's criminal activities. With the help of my sister Rosa, who works in the medical field, and several FBI agents who have been investigating financial crimes, we have built an ironclad case against Victoria Sterling and her father." She paused, looking out over the crowd of shocked faces. "I know many of you considered Victoria a friend. You trusted her, did business with her, welcomed her into your homes and your social circles. I want you to know that she used those relationships to gather information that she then used to commit crimes against innocent people." James watched Elena command the room with the same natural authority he had glimpsed when she talked about art. This was who she really was. Not just a victim of Victoria's cruelty, but a leader, a fighter, someone who could inspire others and make difficult things happen. "The evidence we have gathered will be made public tomorrow," Elena said. "You will learn about the families Victoria destroyed, the businesses she bankrupted, the lives she ruined in her quest for power and wealth. And you will understand that justice, although delayed, has finally been served." Elena stepped away from the microphone and walked back toward James, but she was intercepted by several guests who wanted to speak with her. James watched in amazement, as people who had been strangers to Elena an hour ago now treated her with respect and admiration. Word was spreading quickly through the crowd about who she really was and what she had accomplished. A well-dressed older woman approached Elena, with tears in her eyes. "Ms. Rodriguez, my husband and I bought several pieces from your family's gallery years ago. They were some of the most beautiful acquisitions in our collection. We were heartbroken when we heard about what happened to your business." Elena smiled. "Graciously, thank you for saying that. It means more than you know to hear that our work brought beauty into your life." A younger man stepped forward. "Ms. Rodriguez, I'm a journalist with the Arts Review. Would you be willing to give me an interview about your plans for the future? The art world has missed the Rodriguez family's expertise and eye for talent." James felt his heart racing as he realized what was happening. Elena was not just getting her revenge against Victoria, she was reclaiming her place in the world, rebuilding the reputation and connections that Victoria had tried to destroy. Love's true victory. As the evening wound down and the last of the guests departed, James and Elena found themselves alone on the terrace where Elena had confronted Victoria hours earlier. The paper lanterns cast a soft glow over the garden, and the night air was warm and sweet with the scent of jasmine. "I can't believe what you accomplished tonight," James said, still trying to process everything he had witnessed. "You didn't just get revenge on Victoria. You exposed an entire criminal organization and probably saved other people from being victimized." Elena leaned against the stone balustrade and looked up at the stars. "Revenge was never really the goal," she said thoughtfully. "I wanted justice. Yes. But more than that, I wanted to prove to myself that I was strong enough to fight back. For a year, I let Victoria's actions define me. I let her make me feel small and powerless and ashamed. Tonight, I took my power back." James moved to stand beside her, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "What happens now?" he asked. Elena turned to look at him, and in the soft light, she looked more beautiful than ever. "Now I rebuild," she said simply. "Several people tonight offered to invest in a new gallery. Others want to consign pieces with me or hire me as a consultant. The art world is ready to welcome the Rodriguez family back." James felt a mixture of joy and fear as he realized what Elena's success might mean for their relationship. "I'll do that." "You mean you'll be leaving New York? Going back to the art world you used to know?" Elena smiled and reached for his hand. "That depends.